What a beautiful day, isn't it? Well, it's time to check out my new video on YouTube. Maybe I get 3,200 views. No fucking way! It's real, guys! We did it! Greetings, my friends. Today you will learn how the Prince of Persia series of games was created, how popular it was, and what is happening with the Prince of Persia, because there is a lot to tell, especially about the very beginning of the creation of this franchise, and how many memes there were. Let's take the song I Stand Alone, for example. I think you get my point. Anyway, sit down at the table, grab your dagger of time, because we're going to look at the full history of the Prince of Persia games. Let's go back to how we created the first 2D Prince of Persia game. It was 1984, and a young and cool Jordan Mechner created his first game, which was named Karateka. This is his first published game, which he created while he was studying at Yale University. The game was published in North America by Broderband and in Europe by Ariolasoft. If you're sitting here with a face like that, and you don't understand why I told you about Karateka, then listen to me further. Karateka has become an excellent basis for creating a legendary game that literally gained popularity in a couple of days. And this game is the Prince of Persia 2D. The plot in this game is not very cool, but you need to tell about it.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
In medieval Persia, Vizier Jafar seizes power and imprisons the Sultan's daughter, demanding she marry him or die. The protagonist, her lover, must escape the dungeons, reach the tower, and defeat Jafar within 60 minutes. Along the way, he faces guards, traps, and a doppelganger created from a magic mirror. And all this was in the first Prince of Persia. It was a typical, but damn good plot and its presentation. And what about the plot of Prince of Persia 2? The events of Prince of Persia 2 take place 11 days after the events of the first Prince of Persia, and then it would seem that the prince would live in peace and tranquility. But unexpectedly, there was a strong comeback. That's right, the vizier returned from the dead using dark magic. And even after a deadly battle with the prince in which the vizier died, the vizier still survived thanks to magic. The prince flees, dreams of his mother, survives shipwreck, fights skeletons, and escapes on a magic carpet. Jafar seizes the throne and curses the princess. The prince learns his royal lineage and gains a magical sword. With the help of his shadow and a magic flame, he returns to Persia, kills Jafar, and saves the princess. The game ends with a cliffhanger involving an old witch watching the couple. And this was the story of the first and second Prince of Persia. The plot was still quite interesting for those years, but we should move on because the time for 3D games is coming. Ladies and gentlemen, now you will see the worst part of Prince of Persia ever. It has low scores, tank-like controls, and a standard plot. And the name of this game is...
Holy shit, dude!
That's right, the Prince of Persia 3D, and oh god, how awful this game was. The controls, the story, the combat system, the design, it was all terrible. If you think this is my personal opinion, then check out the game scores on Metacritic. What's the plot? Well, it's the same as in Prince of Persia 1. We have the following characters: a Prince of Persia, a princess in captivity, and one vizier. Oh, and we also have an aggressive tiger who wants to kill the protagonist, so you understand how brilliant the plot and its presentation are here. I don't see any point in dwelling on the plot here, because the difference is not much. So let's move on to the very peak of the Prince of Persia series of games.
Let's go!
Oh yes, this music brings back memories of childhood. But that's not the point. In 2003, Jordan Mechner, together with the well-known Ubisoft company, decided to reboot the Prince of Persia game series. And so in 2003, the Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time was born. This game was very good at the time. It had very high scores, perfect style, beautiful views, music, combat system, and much more. In general, people liked the game. It was well received and had good Metacritic scores. Well, the storyline looks. The prince and his father decided to attack the Indian kingdom where, according to verified information from Forshan, there were unrealistic riches, and when the army was ready to attack, the vizier killed the guard and opened the gates for the Shahraman army. Then our prince, while killing Indian soldiers, realized that he didn't really like the way of killing, and he decided to be the first to find the treasure. When he got inside the castle, he found a dagger that could rewind time for a few seconds, and when the prince showed his father this dagger, the vizier immediately wanted to steal it and take it for himself. But the prince's father did not let him do it because it was the prince's first trophy. And so when the army of the Shahraman took away all the treasures and attractive maidens, they decided to make a gift to one sultan to make friends with him. And then the cunning thief, the vizier, saw this moment. He decided to deceive the sultan and say that in the hourglass there are such riches that can only be opened by the dagger of time. And without thinking twice, the prince opens the sands of time. And then the trouble comes. Now, I've told you briefly about the plot of Prince of Persia Sands of Time so that you can roughly understand what's what. And now I'd like to talk about the different game mechanics that have been introduced to this game. Let's start with rewinding time. Rewinding time is like an extra life. That is, if you screwed up somewhere, you can rewind everything to the point where you can fix everything. But you need to take into account that the sands of time are not endless, and they need to be obtained by absorbing sand monsters with the dagger of time. Oh, I almost forgot. You need the dagger of time to completely kill the sand monsters, because if you just wound them and don't finish them off, they will regenerate and continue fighting. Also, after the battle is over, the following sandstorms will appear on the location during the game. We will see a girl in red clothing with a bow. Her name is Farah. As we progress through certain locations, we can notice how after battles, the prince loses pieces of his armor and clothing, which looks cool. It kind of shows the growth of our main character. But back to the plot and the goal of our duo. When the prince found Farah, he decided to descend and help her kill the sand monsters, but among them was the prince's already infected father. By the way, about the boss fights in the Sands of Time, they are rather underwhelming. You could say it's just the same sand monster, but bigger and with more ape-end damage. After the prince defeated his father, he jumped into a sandstorm to save his progress, and when he woke up, he saw Farah trying to steal a dagger, but our alpha male wouldn't let her do that. However, Farah explained that the prince wouldn't be able to stop the Sands of Time on his own and needed help. From that moment on, the duo had only one goal: to reach the Tower of Dawn and close the Sands of Time. And this was the plot of Prince of Persia Sands of Time. As for me, the game was perfect, and even today you can play it with pleasure. But we have another very cool game, so I'm making the transition to CapCut and we continue. Tell me, does this music remind you of anything? Because this music reminds me of my childhood and the Prince of Persia. Oh, that game is still better than the current games. You see, in 2004, Prince of Persia, The Warrior Within made quite a splash at E3. People were shocked by the new style of the game and the new graphics at that time. But unfortunately, this game was developed without Jordan Mechner's participation because he didn't really like the cruel and head-butted prince. But even so, the game is considered the best of the Sands of Time trilogy. The goal of this game was not to make you cry from the heartbreaking story of the protagonist, but to make you go crazy with combos and how the prince has changed over the past 7 years. Briefly, the events of Prince of Persia Warrior Within take place after the events of Battles of Prince of Persia and after Prince of Persia Forgotten Sands. Well, I'm just saying. The music in this game also played a big role, and it's on par with the music from Devil May Cry 3 and Metal Gear Rising. And the music was composed by our favorite Stuart Chatwood, who made some of the most kick-ass soundtracks in the game. Now fast forward to the plot of Warrior Within. After 7 years of running away from the Dahaka, the prince is trying to do something to stop running away from the Dahaka. And so somewhere in the desert, he meets an old man who tells him about the Dahaka and why he is hunting for the prince. So the prince, with his crooked hands, broke the timeline in which the prince was supposed to die. But the prince changed his fate and lived happily ever after until the Dahaka was gone. And the grandfather says that the prince will die of Dahaka, but this does not work for our homeless man. So the grandfather tells about some island of time where there are portals and all sorts of other things, but the grandfather says that it's not an island, it's a horror. The prince says he doesn't care and leaves. But Old Man said that fate cannot be changed, and no one could do it. Our goal throughout the game will be to find the Empress of Time and prevent her from creating the sands of time so that our black-haired friend can sleep peacefully after these hard 7 years. On our way, we will keeps. Raiders, keepers, executioners, and sometimes crows or one solid crow called Crowmaster. That is, you realize how much the enemies have changed by comparing the sands of time. But unfortunately, the Prince of Persia series of games began to slowly die, and here's why. Sometime in 2005, at the E3 exhibition, Ubisoft showed a trailer for a new part of the Prince called Kindred Blades. People were shocked by the new game, as E3 showed not only the game trailer, but also some moments from the game's gameplay and various game mechanics. This is the same cancelled Prince of Persia, Kindred Blades. The only thing I can say about the game is that it should have been even darker and more brutal than Warrior Within. But the game was quickly closed due to the fact that the fans of the Sands of Time were not happy with an even darker game, and Ubisoft was forced to almost completely redesign the game. The plot, characters, gameplay, and mechanics were completely changed, and even the name of the game was changed from Kindred Blades to The Two Thrones. In general, Two Thrones is an interesting game, but it's clear that it was made in a hurry. From plot holes to design, bugs, and graphics. It's worse here than in Warrior Within, although it should have been the other way around. It should have been better and more detailed. But everything went wrong, and we have Two Thrones. In general, Two Thrones is the finale of the entire Sands of Time trilogy, and this can be seen in the plot. After the secret canonical ending of Warrior Within, there's also the one where Killia was fucked in the hold of a ship. He was sailing back to Babylon, so to speak, to show his girlfriend his empire. But the timeline was changed, there are no sands of time, and when the Maharaja arrived on the island of time, the only thing he found there was an empty sand time and a dagger and scepter. After a couple of days, the dagger began to interpret to the vizier that he should go to Babylon. When the vizier wanted to go to Babylon, the Maharaja did not allow him to do so, so the vizier stabbed the Maharaja to death. Do you think that's all? PFT, get ready for more. As the prince sails back to Babylon, he finds his kingdom in flames and chaos. Some unknown people have taken over his city and are killing his own people. And when the Scythians spotted the prince's ship, they began to fire from all sides. During this, the Empress talks about people's mistakes, that some people make small mistakes, and some people make fatal ones. But the prince's mistake is, of course, a complete bullshit, because you have to be able to fuck up. And so their ship was sunk, the prince was thrown to another part of the shore, and the Empress to another. During the parkour and other segments, the prince will find a knife with which he will kill enemies. When he got to the throne room, he wanted to stand up his lady like an alpha male, but he was quickly humiliated. And then this old Soviet face, the vizier, shows up. Since we cancelled the events of the Sands of Time, we did not open the hourglass, and accordingly we did not kill the vizier, so he was alive and well. You already understood how to screw up so that everything goes to hell. And then the vizier kills our beloved, and the Sands of Time spread throughout Babylon, but with one twist. If in the first part the Sands of Time were not subject to any control, then in the second part they were controlled, and accordingly only the vizier's army, and he himself received deformation and various kinds of mutations. In Two Thrones, the prince did not have any time artifacts. He threw away the amulet. The vizier had the dagger, so when the Sands of Time were released, he was also infected, but only his left hand. With grief and pain, the prince still takes the dagger of time from the vizier, and somewhere along the corridors of the throne room, he falls into a pool. After a good night's sleep, our prince somehow changed his clothes on the flight, but as if our prince didn't want to lie down, a voice told him,
"Wake up, wake up, wake up."
And no sooner had our friend completed a couple of parkour segments than he turned to his dark side. Fareinheits. fuck, who wrote the script? This wasn't even in the script. That is, our prince turns into his alternative dark, evil and aggressive version. And if you believe in the Kindred Blades fables, it was a separate character. And here, it's our usual prince, but let's say in Devil Trigger. Speaking of the mechanics of the Dark Prince, here's a quick guide. When our prince wields his Devil Trigger, he has a chain embedded in his hand as a second weapon. With the help of this chain, he can quickly kill enemies, use it to open doors, fly over some obstacles, and run a little longer along the wall. As you may have noticed, our dark side has one ailment. His health is gradually decreasing, and to restore it, you need to kill sand monsters and loot time sand from them. To expel the dark side from our body, you just need to stand in the water. After our prince got out of the sewers, he went up to a tower and was about to tell us his story. But then the dark side asked him to close his cunt because at the bottom there was a visor that was completely deformed. And now the goal of our prince is to take revenge on the vizier for the people in the city and to end this cunt once and for all. Along the way, our prince will be using portals like this to do things like slow down time and sand kaboom. Our prince will also ride chariots, meet Farah, get caught by a Farah for being a dark prince and much more. But of course, our prince has a partner who will help him in every way possible. When our couple, after a long journey and various death screens, get to the throne room, the vizier flies out of nowhere and takes the headlight as his wife. Our prince has learned nothing, and he screws up again. The vizier simply broke the floor under the prince and he fell into the well. During the flight, he will be saved by his transformation to the dark side, but it's not that simple. At the beginning, the prince just thought about killing the vizier. He didn't think about saving the local people, he didn't care about it. But when the head lump appeared, it showed him that he was doing something stupid, and after that, the prince thought about whether he was doing the right thing. And when the dark side tried to direct the prince again for its own benefit, the prince asked his alter ego to shut the fuck up. The dark prince was furious, of course, but said that without him, the prince would be bad. After the prince almost dies due to the lack of sand of time, he finds a room that contained his father's sword, and then his father himself, but he is dead. After that, the prince finally recognized that he was like a small child, and now he will proudly accept his actions and their consequences. And then, the prince regains his human form without water, which the dark prince was well and truly surprised by. Then, after another long journey, we find the vizier and the Farah.
Why are you running?
And so the Sand of Time turns into the Empress of Time, who takes the last artifact of time and removes the infection from the prince. And everything seems to be a happy ending, but for one thing,
all that is yours is rightfully mine, and mine it will be.
I don't know how, but our dark side broke free, and now we are trying to completely cleanse our subconscious of it. Along the way, we will be thrown into locations from different parts of the prince. We will get on a ship with a warrior inside, then into the Farah room from the Sands of Time, but when we have already come to the two thrones, we can see a headlight that says to release the shadow and wake up already. And after the prince wakes up, Farah asks the prince how he knows her name, and the prince stupidly retells the plot of the entire trilogy. That's right, friends, it was the legendary Time Sands trilogy, of course. The developers wanted to give the series a new lease of life once again by releasing Prince of Persia 2008 and The Lost Crown. But these are completely different games that are not related to the Prince series in any way. Well, Fareinheits was with you. I want to thank people like Venom, Silly Gangster, Pop Tutorials, Lucas9, and users of the Discord server, Kindred Blades and Fareinheits Office for their help. Join us in Discord. And that's it. Have a nice day.